what happens in that situation? Well, obviously the person is charged with the crime for which they're arrested. The theft of means of transportation, the assault, the burglary, or whatever. But they also get charged for the possession of drugs or of drug paraphernalia. Why is that done? Because that's such a minor offense compared to the actual property crime or other real, what I would call real crimes they're arrested for. It's done to give leverage in the course of the plea bargain negotiations. So if you're arrested, they'll, whatever they can think of charging you with, they will charge you with. And if that includes possession of marijuana, for instance, they will charge you with possession of marijuana at the same time. Class 6 felony on top of all the other things that they arrested you for. Now the plea bargaining dance begins, and the negotiation begins between the prosecutors and the defendant and the defense lawyer. And the prosecutors have something to trade with. They've got that class 6 felony sitting there for the possession of drugs, which they can use as a bargaining chip in the negotiations. What's the result of all this? The result of all this are many people faced with the possibility that they're going to be convicted of several different crimes rather than one, and they cave and they plead guilty to one of them to a lesser offense. And oftentimes the drug offense is piled in there, several different drug offenses. So that gives the prosecution a bargaining chip. What's the bottom line? The bottom line is that some people, and we'll never know how many, some people are pleading guilty to felonies and going to jail or going to prison, albeit for a shortened time, because of that drug offense that was tagged on. They couldn't take the risk. They knew maybe they could beat the rap, so to speak, as they say in the jargon, on the burglary or the car theft or whatever, but when that search took place, they had that green leafy substance in their pocket, and they were going to be found guilty of that no matter what. And Maricopa County juries will convict on that. So to avoid that, they plead to a different offense and go away, even though they might have been not guilty or found not guilty to the original theft of means or whatever. So the entire system is distorted. You end up with people pleading guilty who might in fact be innocent, but they can't take the risk because they had that marijuana in their pocket. So they go away to prison instead. That's a little known distortion of the system that's a direct result of the war on drugs. Well, what to do about any of this in terms of the future? If you believe, as I'm sure most people in this room believe, that the war on drugs is not only a failure, it's not only immoral, it's not only costs too much, and it will never work. If you believe all of those things, and you want to change public policy, how do you do it? Well, first of all, I would suggest not to lose hope. And sometimes people lose hope because they, year after year, look and they say, well, what is Congress doing? What's the president doing? Why can't the Republicans and Democrats in Congress come up with, can't they see that this is insane? That this is insanity? Could we have 435 representatives, 100 senators, and a president and a vice president who are all crazy simultaneously? How could this be? Which it can't be. And because you see no action at the federal level, you assume that there's no progress being made. I have a more optimistic view. I think politicians act on what I call the 50% theory. Until they think that they can win an election advocating drug legalization, they will not advocate it. It's a very simple, primal thing that it's in the DNA of politicians. They only have two purposes, remember, get elected and get reelected. So, and you can't do that in a winner-take-all situation unless you can get 50% of the vote. And if they know that saying, yeah, you know, the drug war is crazy, it's insane, I oppose it, I'm for legalization. If they know that they're going to lose the election if they say that, they will never say it, even if they believe it. Even if the polls say, as they do, that more and more people are beginning to understand that the drug war is at least a massive failure, if not immoral. Those numbers are creeping up every year. You know that because you follow this kind of thing. And that number is getting higher and higher. But until it gets close to 50%, or at least 50% in a given geographic area, you won't get politicians stepping forward. For instance, there was an announcement today about Oakland, and they're going to license people to have these large cannabis production areas. Well, in Oakland, you can say that and get elected to something. That was a unanimous vote of the city council there. In fact, if you read the internet today about that, the big debate there was whether they shut out small producers. It was small producers versus big producers. That was the only debate going on in that city council chamber. Nobody stood up and said, marijuana is the work of the devil. Stop this. No one said that in Oakland. Now that's Oakland. If you go, all politics is local. If you go to Topeka, Kansas, it's going to be a little bit different. I don't know Topeka, I'm just guessing. And if you go to Phoenix, Arizona, I know it's going to be different too. But the point is, when you reach that tipping point, when you convince politicians that they can essentially be honest for a change and say, yeah, I actually advocate this, then you will get change. That's why you're getting more change on the state level than you're seeing on the federal level. And there's a real collision course that we're on now. I mean, you guys see it here. There's a proposition on the ballot here in Arizona. There's one for legalization for personal use in California. All of this stuff is coming to a head. More and more states are moving this direction. The feds have done nothing. They're sort of terrified. They don't know what to do at this point. There's something between 0 and 50% where they're just mum. Did you notice, for instance, President Obama had one of these internet-based press conferences about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And what they did was they said, okay, people all across the country, we want to have a people's press conference. We want everybody to send in your questions for the president. And many, many people did that. Hundreds of thousands of questions came in. And they broke them all down by categories, etc. The number one question, when are we going to legalize marijuana? Was the number one question. But when they came to the press conference, they treated it like a joke. And the president said, I'm not going to answer that, and went on to something else. That kind of pressure, where those numbers keep pushing up, where more and more people are speaking out and taking positions on this, eventually will have an effect on the politicians. 10 years from now, a president will not be able to laugh that off if in fact the numbers keep going in the same direction. He won't be able to say, legalize marijuana, what a joke, okay, next question. He will not be able to do that in 10 years. It won't be Obama, it'll be somebody else, but he won't be able to see that. They'll either have to take one position or the other. Either have to address the issue on the merits and say, I support the war on drugs because, and engage, or actually take a pro-freedom position on it. The days of, I'm not going to say anything, will soon be over because people like you will continue to agitate, your numbers will grow, and you'll have a greater effect on the politician. That's my optimistic view of it. Here's another little tip. I told you I'm not going to tell you how to vote on anything, who to vote for, who not to vote for. But here's a tip to take from other groups that organize around specific issues. And I'm thinking particularly of the pro-life and pro-choice groups. Have you ever noticed that when they get involved in a political, no matter what level that they're operating at, and they're trying to pin down a particular political candidate, they won't take no for an answer. They won't take, that's not relevant to this position for an answer. They won't take, well, look at my webpage, or I've spoken on this before. They will press until they're able to identify who's pro-life, who's pro-choice. And they do that because they not only they organize, but they make it known to everybody far and wide that they're not going to vote for somebody who won't pass their litmus test.